Welcome to the London Free Press Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Gilbert. After navigating London's most recent budget, London City Council is having to make an unexpected financial decision on a piece of infrastructure close to many hearts. And we've learned that the Thames pool in Old South will be closed again this summer because of significant structural issues after being closed last summer for the same reason. And the earliest it can reopen after repairs is 2024. Today, I'm talking with London Free Press reporter Jonathan Juha about whether the Thames pool is an historical asset that deserves continued saving, or if it's a money pit that, after 100 years, should be abandoned. Hi, Jonathan. How are you?
Not too bad yourself.
Good. I know you've been kind of in deep with this story the last few days because there's been a lot of reaction since the last committee met at City Council, right? Let's just talk about, first of all, kind of setting the stage. Thames Pool was closed last summer and they were doing renovations. They had to do more repairs and it couldn't open. But now we've learned it's going to be closed this summer too.
Yes, correct.
Why is that?
Well, after they had to close last year, the pool, City Hall hired some external evaluators who came in and did some studies on the pool, and they discovered that the pool itself had suffered some very serious structural damage just because of the constant flooding that it has received because of its location near the Thames River and the floodplain there. But it sort of like came out of nowhere, I guess, for many people. Just, they knew that the pool had been closed last summer, but last week, City Hall came out saying, city staff are recommending to decommission the pool and announcing sort of like some of the alternatives and the reasoning why. But I guess no one really expected that these, for many people, historic site, almost close to 100 years, right? Mm-hmm. That it was so sudden that the city staff came out saying, the best course of action is just to simply shut it down because of the extent of the damage and the possibility that even if you do repairs to it, the main issue continues to be its location. We've been having more intense flooding events and heavy rains and things like that. So there's no guarantee that any type of work or repair that is done to the pool itself can prevent, further damage to the infrastructure. So they say that the fiscally responsible thing to do is to simply, decommission it, close it for good, and figure out new solutions as to what could happen there. The part of the problem has been as well, not only the fact that they, staff recommended in part just closing the pool altogether, is the fact that as part of the city's master plan, staff are recommending saying, in the master plan, it states that we should not be opening more outdoor facilities, like public pools, just because they are open for a few months every year, but their operating cost is still very high. So it doesn't make financial sense. So, as part of the options that they offered, they say, maybe we can put like a splash pad or something in its side while we, consider the possibility of adding a pool the next time that we are working in a community center or something like that. So sort of like the combination of all those factors didn't sit well with many community members who see the value of the pool in this location. And again, it's the only 50-meter outdoor pool. We had, Olympic athlete winner Maggie McNeil saying, this is the pool that I used to train for the Olympics in Tokyo. It's a key piece of infrastructure for the city and for the future generations of swimmers in the city. So it definitely grabbed the attention of the public, and it has created a big debate that now council is sort of like having to deal with right now.
It's so funny because you think, oh, it's just a pool, but there is so much to this story, and you've touched on so many things in that right there. Let's break it down a little bit. Let's talk about the money that's been spent on this pool so far, because in 2010, so the pool opened in 1927, which is, I didn't even realize it was that old, and I'm a lifelong Londoner. But in 2010, it had a major multi-million-dollar overhaul. And then since that time, we've put thousands into this pool in renovations as well.
Yeah, just in 2021, there was a 1.2 million work done to change rooms and some other work to, renovate the space. But the fact continues to be, since 2016, city staff say they have had to spend more than $250,000 in repairs just because of all the constant flooding that the pool has been experiencing.
Wow.
Now, throughout its history, the pool itself had to be rebuilt. I believe it was 1959. Then again, in 1975, it also had renovations in the 80s and the 90s, and then again the one that you mentioned in 2010. So it's not a new problem. Like it's a facility that has had to undergone a lot of work and a lot of repairs to keep it open to the public.
Mm-hmm.
The question the staff are putting forward, I guess, to councilors is, do we really want to continue to do this place? Now we're talking about significant structural damage that to the pool itself. And again, no amount of work that they do, they say it's going to guarantee, like they can build it to better withstand sort of like the conditions but no amount of work can guarantee that no future repairs will be needed. So it's a question of whether you want to invest millions of dollars, because just rebuilding a new pool itself could be $12 million. Do you want to invest all of that money into a new
repairing
pool
that
again could cause more problems down the road? So that's sort of like the big question, I guess, that politicians will have to answer.
Talk about the fact that this is on a floodplain. I mean, this thing was built on a floodplain. Things, weather, climate has changed over the years, obviously, in the last almost 100. But talk about the damage that's done, like even underneath the pool. Talk about some of the floods that have happened and the damages to like things we can't even see, pipes and the structure of the pool itself.
Yeah, no, it's the report that staff prepared talked a lot about that, about how the base of the pool has shifted, how the lines that feed the water into the pool have also been damaged. So even like there are some minimal repairs that can be done to sort of like to bring it back to operation, I guess, for next summer, and that's sort of like the earliest that city staff say that they could potentially do it. But to really fix the problem, it would require millions of dollars in there. Now, that's sort of like the side from city staff, but for the people, is sort of like the significance of the pool itself, in the sense that for residents, in Old South, Soho, Central London, downtown, sort of like the closest public pool, and one that is. It's not like if it was a piece of infrastructure that was not used. It's actually the busiest pool, that outdoor pool that the city has, right? It draws about 25,000 people, not only from neighbors, but also from other parts of the city, like, people who take their swimming more seriously as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it represents a lot for a lot of people in the community, and even from the aspect of, there are people who cannot really afford to have an air conditioner in their homes. This is sort of like a spot where they go to cool down, I guess, during the high heat summer days as well. On Tuesday, when the issue was being debated at City Hall in one of the committees, there was a mom who mentioned, I'm a single mom right now, like summer camps are not always within my budget, but having an easily accessible public pool there solves a lot of those issues for me, because I can take my children there and they have fun. So it's an important community resource for a lot of people, and for many different reasons as well.
Let's get into some of the back and forth that there's been, because there's been a lot of people weighing in on this. I mean, there's actually a petition to save the pool and keep it open. Is that right?
Yeah. So there's an online petition that was started. I think even the day after the news came that the proposal from city staff was to decommission the pool. I'm just checking right now, and it has 3,800 signatures from people who are sort of like supporting this motion. Mm-hmm. But the reactions have been varied across the city. You have the people who, talk about, obviously, a piece of infrastructure is almost 100 years old. It's important, significance to the community. They talk about it as a historical site. But there are other people who, see the point of City Hall of it would not be fiscally prudent to sort of like spend all this money if they know that they're going to be having to spend more money on it down the road again. So,
sure.
So they're sort of like the divide is there. Like you're going to find everyone. There are people who say, it's money that even if we have to spend it, the impact that it has in the community is far greater than the amount of money that we would be needed to sort of like get it back to work. So you're going to find a great variety of opinion as to what should happen with this piece of infrastructure there.
So can you talk about the motion that the committee has put forward? This is actually going to go to full council on April 4th, and we'll kind of look forward to that. But what is in front of them right now? What did they decide to ask for?
So the motion had several different points, but the gist of it is, first of all, sort of like asking staff to bring a report saying, let us know what would be needed to do so we can at least salvage the 2024 summer season for the pool, like reopen it to the public next year, knowing that it's too late already to sort of like get it open this year. So let's see what we can do for next year. And then next year, at the same time, bring us a more detailed report as to some of possible options. What would it take to rebuild the pool, or what would it take to relocate it, or what could be perhaps, a better location for it within the same neighborhood that would allow people to still have access to a public pool in the area.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So sort of like a more detail, more options, and at the same time, giving the public more time to comment on it. Because talking to some of the people who were involved and who were mad about sort of like the whole situation, part of it was that they felt that, the report came last week and last Wednesday, and then on Tuesday, the committee was meeting already to sort of like potentially make a decision as to what was going to happen. So they felt so like there was not enough time for them to sort of like have their voices heard and share their experiences and why they thought that this was perhaps a piece of infrastructure that is worth saving. Mm-hmm. So basically what council decided to do, or like the members of the committee, was buy themselves a little bit of more time. We'll get more information. We don't have to make a rash decision at this point. And mm-hmm. then they're buying themselves some time to sort of like get that input, that feedback, I guess more studies from staff and more alternative as to what could happen for the long-term future of the property. Now, even by them doing that, it doesn't really mean that, that the pool is going to be saved. Like the reality remains the same. The location itself is a problem for the pool. Mm-hmm. So we'll have to wait and see what the report is and what, some of the suggestions coming from staff are. And based on that is where politicians will be able to sort of like make a decision.
Mm-hmm. Some Londoners and also some councillors were kind of caught off guard when staff came and said this, as you said last week. But is this the first time staff has recommended, hey, maybe we should think about decommissioning this pool? Do you know? Because we've put thousands into this pool over the last decade even. And I can't imagine this is the first time that they'd thought about it. Maybe it's the first time we know publicly, but they must have been a thought.
As far as I know, yes, obviously, like as you say, if you look at the history of the repairs and the renovations and everything, it's nothing new that the location has been problematic. Right. My sense could be that perhaps the extent of the damage that has happened again since 2016 and the constant flooding, it's of such a big scope that at this point staff felt, maybe the right path is to simply, decommission and move on and not try to sure. Invest more money in it and find alternative solutions. But again, like I've been saying, it caught a lot of people off guard. And that's sort of like one of the questions that people had been asking, if the last renovation or major work happened in 2010, how is it that, knowing that the issues that the location has had throughout the years, how come is it failing now? Or how come it wasn't built with better protections to better withstand sort of like the elements? But again, as you say, climate is changing. We're talking about 1 in 100 years, rainstorms are happening more often. So it's not something that can really be controlled to an extent, right?
The other thing I find really interesting is that London's, say hypothetically this pool is decommissioned and maybe we decide we want to rebuild another one, except London's master plan, as you mentioned, does not recommend building any more outdoor pools, right?
Exactly. And that's sort of like what has some people as well concerned. I mean, you can build an indoor facility, but I guess you lose, like during the summer months, it's not the same going to an indoor pool than going to one outdoor. So you're losing an aspect of the appeal of the facility itself.
Right.
But you know what? Throughout history, we have seen council, have a master plan and still, make decisions based on a not really following exactly what their own master plan says, but just like make a decision based on the issue of the moment. So who knows what could happen? Councillor Pelosi, she mentioned proposing, is it a possibility to look at a pool that could, have, a roof that can be open during the summer and then closed for the rest of the year so it can be used. I don't know if those are possibilities really that staff can consider, and the cost and all of that, or how practical it is. But, I guess council found itself in a tough position, and hearing all the concerns from residents that they're trying to figure out a way in which they can move forward in a way that, they continue to be fiscally prudent, but at the same time, recognizing the impact that closing this pool would have on the community, and find a way that a solution that would make everyone at least comfortable with, type of thing. And talking to some of the groups that have been involved as well. The other one was the Old South Community Organization, sort of like the neighborhood group in the area. I was talking to the president today, Nicole Phillips, and she was saying how, for us, the key part of it is having a public pool available for the people in the community. What that looks like at the end of the day, we don't know yet. We want to have that opportunity to get the information and see what the city can provide and what the experts say. But what they really center around is, we cannot simply just close down this pool and leave it as is. We need a community resource for people to use in this area. So that's sort of like the main point that they want to get across. What that looks like, again, that they haven't really made up their mind about what they want to see. But at least
they would like that resource.
Yeah, they're happy that at least they're giving sort of like that extra time to have that consultation with the public and learn a bit more about the project and not make any rash decisions.
Yeah. I found two comments interesting. Councillor Corinne Rahman said that she's heard from Londoners who can't get their kids into swimming lessons. They're all booked up. There's also a lifeguard shortage. She says, we need more aquatics programs and probably pools to accommodate that. So obviously she's looking for a solution to either keep it open or build a new one is optimal, I guess, right? For many people.
Yeah. So, but again, like what the price tag is going to be, obviously, that like the city is facing some other pressures as well when it comes to, homelessness and housing affordability crisis and some of the big projects for the bus rapid transit downtown. So, it's not as easy as simply, saying, let's just invest this money when we have these other pressing issues. But obviously that's the job of council. So like set the priorities and figure out a way to sort of like spend taxpayers' money.
Yeah. On the flip side, I think you interviewed a hydrogeologist from, I think, Guelph. Chris Helmer is his name. And he said, as they see and he kind of studies the flow of water and floodplains and things like that. And he says, here's his quote: "As we see in southern coastal regions regularly devastated by hurricanes, sometimes the right thing to do is not rebuild in an area where the likelihood of repeated impacts is high or inevitable." And I think there are a lot of people who agree with that statement too.
Yeah, no. Like I say, like the reactions from the community has been varied, and there are a lot of people who also see the point where city staff are coming from and saying, obviously, we don't want to waste more money on a piece of infrastructure that may require extra money, maybe just 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, right?
Absolutely.
It's just a question. Yeah. What do you do with it? Do you still throw the money at the problem or find a different solution? But I think council has been clear that at the end of the day, it's, again, the location, it's a reality that cannot be changed. And in my humble opinion, I guess that the commission, like the pool itself, is going to have to close at some point, and an alternative solution would be sort of like the best way to move forward. I think that, again, a way to not put so much money in a piece of infrastructure that would require more repairs, while at the same time providing residents in the area that access to a public pool that they so desperately need.
Right. Okay. Well, full council will come together April 4th and they'll be talking about this. So we'll be watching for that, and we'll definitely be watching your stories at lfpress.com and following your reporting. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you for having me.